So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this new series, this new class, the study of Tanya. I'm going to immediately begin a bit on the, see a little bit the backdrop of the evolution of the class, how it began, and so on, and what it's all about on this very website, the TanyaOnline.com website, which we look forward more and more participants to participate, because naturally of the unique information the Alter Rebbe shared with us. Indeed, Tanya being a revolutionary sefer, a revolutionary book, a revolutionary sefer, which one could say, justifiably could say, that revolutionized the entire approach to Yiddishkeit for those who studied and invested and put their mind to it and learned the Tanya in a be'iyun, in other words, in depth, appreciated every single pedic, as the Alter Rebbe has a very perfect and calculated sequence, starting from the first segment, which is Likutei Amorim. We know that in Tanya itself there are 5 Sfarim, the Likutei Amorim, Shariach Emunah, Igeres HaTshuva, Igeres HaKodesh, and then Kunter Sachen. As Hashem will have an opportunity to elaborate on the style and the manner of how each sefer, what was the message of each one of these compartments. We'll just add that the 5 Sfarim of Tanya, as it's mentioned a number of places, as Tanya being the Torah Shebiksav of Torah Chassidus, as the written Torah, as we know that in the Torah, Moshe Kibbel Torah Sinai, there is the written Torah and the oral Torah. The oral Torah was as well given to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah itself testifies that Moshe Rabbeinu received the entire Torah. It's oral Torah itself, but what is the oral Torah? It's not a separate Torah. It's the explanation, it's the details, it's the articulation of the way the written Torah is transcribed. A little example, Torah says, Ukshartam leis le'yadecha taya is a sign on your hand. That's ambiguous, that's not clear. So what does Torah mean when Torah says to tie it as a sign on your hand, or to be tefillin on your head? This is what the oral Torah is all about. It comes in and dissects every mitzvah by mitzvah, and tells us exactly how to fulfill this mitzvah. And again, where did this begin? When we say that Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu the oral Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu, from his example himself, his generation, ultimately put on tefillin in the exact same fashion as we put on tefillin, because Hashem pointed out to Moshe Rabbeinu, what I mean to tie it as a sign on your hand, I mean exactly the tefillin with its hundreds of details, as we all know, the way this one mitzvah of tefillin is comprised from. And so to mitzvah by mitzvah by mitzvah by mitzvah, Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu, besides the written Torah, he explained every mitzvah which is transcribed in the written Torah to its maximum, to its ultimate detail, in order to know how to actually perform these mitzvahs. But nonetheless, there's still that clear compartmentalization of the written Torah and the oral Torah. The Torah which we have, for example, which we read in the Shul, Chamishi Chumshe Torah, this is where all the energy of the entire Torah is condensed. And this is why it's called the written Torah. This is the original document which Hashem gave over to Moshe Sinai. And so it says, in those 40 days when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Har Sinai, Hashem explained to him every single one of those mitzvahs, the way they would ultimately become manifest in the oral Torah. But nonetheless, can't compare. Similarly, it was brought and mentioned many times by Chassidim that the Tanya itself, as the first formal document of the Alter Rebbe, as the first leader in the Chabad dynasty, his first production, his first work was the Sefer Likutei Amorim Tanya. So it's said that the Tanya would be called the Torah Shebiksav of Torah Chassidus, the written Torah within Torah Chassidus itself. Since we have thousands, literally, tens of thousands of discourses from all the 7 Rabbeim, starting from the Alter Rebbe till our Rebbe, hundreds of svarim explaining many important matters of God, godliness, different terms of different ideas conveyed in Kabbalah and in other areas of Pnimis HaTorah, the esoteric part of Torah. But most of it, one way or another, is predicated on this very Sefer Likutei Amarim, which is again the first and the foremost production of the Alter Rebbe himself. The magnum opus of the Alter Rebbe would be arguably, or by far, the Tanya. That's the way he began. That was his first formal structured production that he produced, which again, which is brought in a number of places, that all the other Chassidus, even from the Alter Rebbe himself, the Alter Rebbe himself wrote about 40 or 53, I believe the number is 53 Svarim Chassidus. You have Likutei Torah, but he wrote many other Svarim Chassidus. One way or another, they're based on the information of Tanya, one way or another. And so too, all the other tens of thousands of discourses, from all the other Abbaim, thousands and thousands of discourses of all the other Abbaim, is all based one way or another on the information of Tanya, similar to the oral Torah, based on the written Torah. Every detail in the oral Torah, leke, davar, the lerimiza beiraisa. There's nothing which is not hinted in the in the written Torah. As the Gemara says, there's nothing in the oral Torah which is not hinted in the written Torah, in the Torah Shabbat. So it says that's why it was divided into 5 also, like we have Chamishi Chumshe Torah, Likutei Amarim, eventually the Tanya. There was the 5 Svarim of the Tanya, Likutei Amarim, Shayich B'Emunah, Igeres HaTshuva, Igeres HaKodesh, and Kodesh Zachen. Perhaps one day we'll be able to point out what is the style or what is the message of each one of these Svarim. But it said, it was brought clearly, and it's given over that, this is that similarity, the 5 Svarim of Torah Shabbat and the 5 Svarim within Tanya, again the Torah Shabbat of Teres Chassidus. So we will, and again, just to add a bit of the backdrop of this very class, you can see it on this very website. Obviously, we won't take the time to point this out. We're all together, we're learning, we'll start and we will move on. Though we will start from the very first, the Sharblat, it would be called, the page which is the gateway into Tanya. Why would we start from the gateway into Tanya? Because the Alter Rebbe began, the Alter Rebbe wrote this Sharblat, he wrote this gateway into Tanya. He wrote here word for word, and therefore it makes only sense that we start from this Sharblat, because the Alter Rebbe laid the foundation of the reason why he's writing, and again, just in a few short lines, what he's trying to bring out, what is he trying to accomplish, what is he trying to explain to us in this very unique, revolutionary Sefer of Tanya. And again, he encapsulates this in this very few lines, but again, he wrote it. Not everybody who writes a Sefer, they're the ones who document the Sharblat, probably edit it, but many of the Sharblat, in other words, the gateways into those Svarim are written subsequent to their passing, so obviously they didn't write it. Obviously it varies Sefer by Sefer, but Alter Rebbe wrote this, and therefore we're going to begin from the Sharblat itself, and the Alter Rebbe writes this, calls the Sefer Likutei Amarim, which is a Sefer, if you translate it, a collection of sayings. That is extraordinary. Someone of the magnitude of the Alter Rebbe, which wrote such a revolutionary Sefer, such a revolutionary document, and which is unprecedented. The information of the Alter Rebbe is beautifully said by so many. In a few words, it's the perfect manual to life. It's, many people, many Gdolei Yisrael, great among Israel, have written Sifrei Musar, which they want to arouse, encourage, motivate Yidden in their own flock, Yidden in their own generation, and those who, for generations to come, towards Avodas Hashem, towards serving their Creator, which is the purpose for which Neshama came down into this world, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ani lo nivreisi elo l'shamish eskeni. I was created to serve my Master. And obviously there's obstacles, challenges, disturbances, limitations, which we don't have to elaborate. We all know exactly what they are. This is associated with the animal soul, a term we call it the Yetzer Hara, but Alter Rebbe will later give that brilliant, if you will, termination of term to the Yetzer Hara, again, as we will explain, Be'ezrat Hashem, why the term the animal soul. But from the perspective of the animal soul, it's the animalistic inclinations, desires, cravings, the body, which with its own set of, together with the animal soul of inclinations and cravings and lusts, and what it's driven to, that causes a challenge, doesn't allow the neshama, that chelik elokami mal mamash, like the Alter Rebbe will say over here in the second chapter, he opens the neshama is a part of God. It only wants to do what Hashem wants. It only wants to fulfill its mandate, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to serve its creator. The two versions I was created to serve my master. But because of these obstacles, coming from, again, the body and the animal soul, it's not simple as we know it. We want to do all the correct things. We know why we're here, but there are these challenges. So many Gedolei Yisrael, many great leaders among Israel wrote many pages. And those that wrote many svarim in order to motivate their people and generations to come, how to align ourselves with the mandate for which we were created for. But the Alter Rebbe's Tanya is not just another Musar Sefer or another Sefer to help us out. Alter Rebbe's Tanya is the perfect manual to life. Meaning to say, you get something, you get a new gadget. Many people don't even use the manual. They just figure it out in someone, and then they could realize 5 years down the road, oh, if I would only read that manual, I would be able to, it would have contributed so much more to my schedule, my life, and so on. Or if I would see that line of that manual, I read it, but I didn't see these details. And had I only seen it, and sometimes it could be that the manual itself is inaccurate. Someone gives you the information you need to know to somewhat put this gadget to function, or put this if it's an electronic piece or anything which would contribute to the comfort of the human being, it would put it to function, or would, in other words, make it function. You move on with it. But then there is that perfect manual, which when you read it, you're able to appreciate every detail of this electrical supply or gadget, whatever it is, every detail. You're able to appreciate, not only able to appreciate every detail of it, but every detail of it would contribute to another dimension of your life or your schedule or whatever it is. As such, you're living the most maximum productive life you can, because this is a perfect manual, and it gives the information very clear. You just read it, simple reading and simple appreciation. You're able to appreciate. Obviously, you have to put your mind to it. Like the time, you have to put a lot of mind to it and a lot of attention to it. But once you do so, and you finish that manual, your approach to this gadget or whatever it is, is so different than if you don't have that similar manual, or a manual which is so articulate, so detailed, and namely so accurate, commensurate to the function of that piece, of that supply, of that gadget, if you will. And this is where the Tanya, one way or another, is the accuracy, the ability, the Alter Rebbe to see, literally once learns the Tanya, is able to see himself. It's a mirror. It mirrors so perfectly and so accurately and articulately what goes on within the system of the person, their struggles, their challenges. And as it said, like, how did the Alter Rebbe know about this? He was a tzaddik. How did he know so much of in a detail and articulation of the challenges of the average person? The Alter Rebbe would call him the Beinoni, which basically Alter Rebbe's message, calling him a Beinoni, is because he's very average to average human being, with the human inclinations and or the struggles as a result of him being a human being, with all the cravings and desires, lusts, covets the human being has. But that's why the Rebbe Nasi B'Yisrael, one way or another, as it said, is greater than the tzaddik because he's not limited to his state or his level. He is there for his people, and that's what's so great about the tzaddik, that he's able, despite he's on a total different level, he's able to engage with, share information, uplift his flock, despite they are at a total different level than him, as Alter Rebbe calls the Sefer Shel Beinanim, the Sefer of the average, despite he was a tzaddik. So there is, to say it's brilliant, it's more than brilliant, but we could even use the word brilliant over here, not because we have to, we don't have to comment, or the Alter Rebbe doesn't need our compliments on his work, and who are we to compliment Alter Rebbe's work? But just as we talk naturally and casually, there's an enormous amount of brilliance in the Sefer, additional to being a total godly, a divine piece of work. The Alter Rebbe is coming from a very, very unique area. For him to have the ability to write the Sefer HaTanya, it is it's demonstrable that Alter Rebbe is coming from a very different and unique place, more than every other of his predecessors, in order to produce such a work. As it's famously known, the Alter Rebbe was called an Neshama Chadasha, a brand new soul, meaning Neshama d'Atzilus, and Neshama of Atzilus, which we're going to learn in chapter 2, Be'ezrat Hashem. What does it mean? What's the idea of being a Neshama d'Atzilus with the purity of Atzilus? And it's again documented as Neshama Alter Rebbe being a Neshama Chadash, a brand new Neshama, which never came into this world. Most of the Neshamas are reincarnations. They were here in the past. Alter Rebbe was totally a new phenomenon, a new dynamic. New meaning not only just he wasn't there in the past, it was from a new area because he revealed something totally new, revolutionary new, something which is no precedence to this, which the Alter Rebbe revealed in the whole world of Chassidus, not only Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe, but the subsequent Rabbeim, as again mentioned. Bez Hashem appreciated also that this is all introductory to the Mesa Mashiach, where the pasuk says, "Kulam yedu eisi," everybody will have clarity and godliness. Like the pasuk says, "Das Elokei Avicha," to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Knowledge is not only information; it's about transformative energy, which this would be the standard and the norm and the common when Mashiach will come. As the pasuk in the Rambam himself paskins, it says B'Eisi Azman. It says the entire world. For that matter, it's not only Am Yisrael. The entire world will be the occupied. The occupation of the entire world will be to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Similarly, and particularly the Yid, as the Rambam writes towards the end of his magnum opus, Mishneh Torah, that they will be wise even more than the average human being, which will also be occupied in knowledge of his creator, his or her creator, and the Am Yisrael will be chachamim gedolim v'yedim, again das beidam. They'll have a clarity and they will know, as we'll learn by Hashem, that particular term of das, even over chachma bina, the das beidam, the knowledge of their creator. So Chassidus was an introductory to that, and therefore it's revolutionary, because Mashiach's coming is revolutionary, naturally, understandably. The whole entry, the whole Yemaisa Mashiach is not just a bit better, a bit different than the way it was the first 3,000 years since Matan Torah, 3,300 years since Matan Torah, give or take. It's something, understandably, something totally different. And this is what Chassidus, the teaching of Chassidus, is not just another teaching, another pirush. It is mitayamel, it's like a person eats before Shabbos. It's saying Te'ameh Chaim Zachel, those who taste from the taste of Shabbos, merit life. This is the meaning, the custom that people eat a bit of the food of Shabbos before Shabbos in order to get the entry, to get the experience, the sensation of Shabbos already before Shabbos. That was already before Shabbos, and this is the point, and this was the whole idea of the Baal Shem Tov and his disciples, namely the Alter Rebbe with Chassidus Chabad, to bring us into a total different kind of experience in our relationship with our Creator, as an introductory, or even similar to the way it will be when Mashiach will come. Yet, the Alter Rebbe would call this Sefer, which is, again, by far his magnum opus, this is the Teresh Biksav Teresh Chassidus, he would call Likutei Amarim. a collection of sayings, which is so demonstrative of the Alter Rebbe's humbleness, that despite he was in every area of Torah, the greatest of all times. You know, the Rav Shulchan Aruch the Alter Rebbe wrote, and other works of the Alter Rebbe, which were really the history of the Alter Rebbe, had this vast knowledge of the youngest of age. So a little bit, we look into the Alter Rebbe, we say it's a ish plois, a man of wonder. And again, in his contribution to the Nister of Torah, starting from the Tanya, to the esoteric part of Torah, starting from the Tanya, and he only calls it a Likuti Amarim, a collection of sayings. And again, sayings, as he writes in his introduction, sayings of his master of his master. His master was the famous Maggid of Mezrich, and the master of his master, which would be the Baal Shem Tov. He called it again, he says that at the end of the day, it was a collection of sayings, though the Tanya is extremely unique in its kind, in its fashion, in its manner. Accordingly, the Alter Rebbe calls it Likuti Amarim, and Chelik Rishon would be the first of five, and Nikra Sefer Shel Beinanim, the Sefer of the average. And Alter Rebbe calling a whole Sefer, Tanya, Sefer of the average, was well audacious. But this was the Alter Rebbe. This was the Alter Rebbe to say things as they are. Not to, and not only to call a whole Sefer so unique, so holy, so profound, the Sefer of the average, not the Sefer of the special, Sefer of the average, which is part of the revolutionary of the Alter Rebbe. Not to allow people to climb their own ladders, to achieve their greatest achievements in their service to their Creator, but levels which are pertinent to them, hence they can truly climb to very high important levels, as opposed to one climbing a ladder that is not pertinent to him or her, which is again very unique on the in the style of the Alter Rebbe, based on what we mentioned before. Different Bali Musar gave people information, again, not deliberate to introduce erroneous or delusionary information to them, but again, the world wasn't ready yet for the Tanya, so there was a certain inaccuracy. If you look at many Svarim, they tell you ought to be a tzaddik, you ought to be the most righteous person, and you ought to be the most pious person, and if you experience anything else, anything different than that tzaddik experience, you're bad, you're no good, do tshuva right away, which is a good thing at any given time. But what it causes, in a way, that when the person or getting back to the example before, there's two different gadgets which look similar, but if you read one manual and it's not for the exact electronic piece, you're getting some idea, it's helping you go on with it, but there is going to be confusion on the way, inevitably. And similarly, when you tell a person which has no connection to being a tzaddik, be a tzaddik, because you want to try to find, it's again, in your intention is to try to find the best, or try to work with the best, maybe I'll tell them to be a tzaddik, maybe be a bit less than a tzaddik, but you're not giving the exact manual. And therefore, people can get lost, and people did get lost, precisely many times those who were very serious about their service to their Creator, were very confused. Here they were davening, and they tried to develop a certain love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they walked out of shul, all of a sudden they had an inclination, kind of a love, a liking to other things which were antithesis to the experience of God and godliness. They themselves just experience in the shul. So who am I? I like God, I like this, which is antithesis to the Creator. It can and it does cause certain confusion. As opposed to you give the person their own manual and say, you're not a tzaddik. And Alter Rebbe is one of the messages that Alter Rebbe is in Tanya, is that you're not meant to climb the ladder of being a tzaddik. You're not meant to pursue that unique avodah of a tzaddik. That itself is, whoa, that's the first time people ever heard this message. And what it did was, it didn't lower the bar. It just gave people, this is your manual. And when you have the correct manual, you're able to climb a very precious ladder, a ladder which is truly going to bring you to high, very high, lofty, even metaphysical experiences, because you're climbing your own ladder. And this is what the Alter Rebbe calls the entire Sefer, perhaps even audaciously, but this was the Alter Rebbe made it, about that clarity. that transparency in our Avodas Hashem, to tell the Yid that in the end of the day, your Avodah is to be a Beinoni, not a Tzaddik. I will jump the gun over here, because make no mistake, that a Beinoni doesn't mean just the average person, a few sins, a few mitzvahs. Let's be just the average guy, and that would be good enough. God forbid. The Alter Rebbe points out, in the end of the day, that a Beinoni is somebody who does not sin, never did, never does, and never will. This is who he is, and he brings clear proofs from Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh, namely many Gemaras, which note that even a person violates, even with one Aveira, one violation, one transgression to his Creator, maybe in action, maybe in speech, even in thought, he's classified as a Rasha. The Beinoni, as such, is somebody who never sins, never sinned, and never will sin. This is who he is. Somebody who is completely submissive and is subordinate and aligned with his Creator, with Shulchan Aruch. Right away, one may ask, so that sounds like a perfect tzaddik. What's the difference between a Beinoni and a tzaddik? Which we will again gain that information as we will go on. So the Alter Rebbe continues and says, he calls it Sefer Shel Beinoni. He says, Melukot mipi Sfarim mipi Seifrim. It is a combination, again, a compilation. Here again, based on the way he calls the Sefer Likutei Amarim, he writes this is a compilation of Sfarim, Seifrim Kedeshi Elyon, books, scribes, referring to his masters, with supreme holiness. Nishmasam Eden, again, is a term said of those who are deceased, the Neshamas are in Gan Eden, again referring to the Magid of Mezrich and the Baal Shem Tov. Miyusad al pasuk ki korav ilecha adavr ma'ed beficho v'vavcha la'seisei. This is based on this pasuk, which is brought in Chumash Dvarim, that ki korav ilecha hadavr ma'ed, that this Torah is telling us, in Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us, it's an important message that after you have the entire package of Torah, Reishis, Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Dvarim, and so on, and Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating, encouraging, motivating Am Yisrael to do and live the life of Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah tells us, Ki korav ilecha, that this whole Torah is close to you. Don't think it's far from you, but it's close to you. And it's close to you in a way that you can attain it with your mouth, speech, with your heart. Lasei, there you have action. So basically, the message of Torah is that Torah is not just given to you and it's a difficult task. It's something which is removed from real life, real appreciation, but you ought to do it because Hashem says you have to do it. We are servants, Abdei Hashem. We're servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so one way or another we have to align our life with Shulchan Aruch. No. The Torah is telling us that korav ilecha, it is very close to you. We will stop over here, but what Alter Rebbe is going to point out, and again he says, this is what I came to explain this very pasuk, which just a few tidbits of the Alter Rebbe's question over here, or this which he's going to explain, this which needs explanation. How could you say really Torah is close? Torah is attainable. We know, each one of us knows that we have to struggle to align our whole entire life, our entire day, our entire 24 hours with Shulchan Aruch. And again, aligning with Shulchan Aruch is not that I go to daven a little, I have a shir in Torah, I know how to shuckle a little more than someone else, and I have a mezuzah on my door, I put on tefillin every day. We're talking about aligning the entire 24 hours with Shulchan Aruch, as we could all appreciate, especially when it comes to the more nuanced type of service, when it comes to thought, even speech. Action is naturally something which is more attainable in our alignment with Shulchan Aruch, with the way that Hashem wants us to live. But to have the entire 24 hours, that my entire action, speech, and even my thoughts should be perfectly aligned with Hashem's Torah, well, I'll work on it. I could believe that it's maybe one day it'll be attainable, something which I will be able to do perfectly or get there. But even if I will one day, on the surface, it seems difficult. It seems something which is a challenge, as we all know it. And yet, conversely, Torah would say, Korev, it's close. It's not, doesn't seem like it's close. It seems quite distant. Yet I know that I have to climb towards that distance. I have to move myself closer towards this Torah, which seems to be distant. And again, we're talking about a perfect alignment of 24 hours to keep a clean thought, speech, and action. In the Mitzvahs Leisa, this was Hashem says not to speak, not to do, not even to think, to look, and so on and so forth, and then to do everything that Hashem wants me to do. So I could say, I got to move closer to that. And perhaps you want to tell me it's attainable, but how could you tell me it's close? And we know every word of Torah is accurate. Hashem will not tell us something that is not exactly so. So if Hashem told us, look, it's not that close, you got to do it anyways, fine. But how could Hashem write in His Torah that it's close, ki korib? And this is ultimately, so this is what I'm going to explain you, and Bez Hashem will pick up on the next class. We'll finish this introduction, this Sharblat, this gateway into Tanya, and we look forward to beginning the first chapter accordingly. Have a good